They said no housekeeper had ever lasted in the Bennett estate in the upscale neighborhood of River Oaks, Houston. Not one. The towering black iron gates, the perfectly trimmed gardens, the gleaming white mansion that looked like it belonged on the cover of an architecture magazine. But inside was a battlefield. At the center of it was Veronica Rose Bennett, beautiful, elegant, and sharp as a blade. She could slap without warning, yell without reason, and her cutting words could wound deeper than any bruise. In just 6 months, 9 maids had quit. Some left in tears, some slipped away quietly before dawn, and one even climbed over the fence barefoot in the middle of the night. Then Naomi Carter walked in, dark-skinned, calm-eyed, carrying nothing but a nylon bag and the fire in her heart. She wasn't there to run, and she wasn't there to please anyone. She had only one reason: her little daughter Deborah lying in a hospital bed, waiting for an expensive heart surgery. She had nothing left to lose, and she carried with her something Veronica had never faced before. What Naomi did in that house didn't just change her own life. It shattered the ice-cold walls around the heart of the most feared lady of the house in River Oaks. Morning in River Oaks is unlike anywhere else in Houston. The streets stretch beneath towering oak trees, their lush green canopies weaving together to form a massive natural arch. Sunlight filters through the leaves, falling in soft golden streaks onto the spotless asphalt. The faint scent of freshly cut grass mingles with the fragrance of roses from meticulously maintained gardens. Here, every mansion is worth tens of millions of dollars. Each home is an architectural masterpiece, some with classical European columns soaring skyward, others sleek and modern, made of glass that catches the morning light. Every property has its own gates, security cameras, and high brick walls or wrought iron fences to separate it from the outside world. But River Oaks isn't famous only for its wealth. It thrives on unspoken rules. Neighbors exchange polite smiles, but never ask too many personal questions. No one hangs laundry outside, no one leaves trash on the curb for too long, and everything must be just right. From the height of the hedges to the color of the mailbox. Anyone who breaks these norms quickly becomes the subject of hushed cocktail party gossip. On the quiet corner of West Lane and a tree-lined side street, the Bennett estate stands out immediately. The towering black iron gates, with intricate scrollwork polished to a mirror shine, catch the morning Sunday. Beyond the gates, a granite-paved driveway leads straight to the front door. Flanked by lush lawns, trimmed as evenly as velvet, dotted with clusters of purple lavender and perfectly shaped cypress trees. The garage doors, painted pristine white, open to reveal space for at least 6 luxury vehicles: a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Tesla Model X, a Porsche 911, and several glossy black SUVs, all spotless, without a speck of dust. But the strongest impression isn't the luxury, it's the near-total silence. No laughter, no music, only the distant hum of a lawnmower and the rustle of wind through the trees. The staff gardeners, security, and housekeeping move quickly and quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air. When they cross paths, they exchange only a brief nod, and above all, they avoid the gaze of Veronica Rose Bennett. At 42, Veronica Rose Bennett is the perfect image of a River Oaks lady. Tall and slender, with platinum blonde hair curled in soft waves, she is always immaculate. Even when stepping into the garden to check the roses, she wears a silk designer dress, high heels, and flawless makeup, as if she were on her way to a red carpet event. In Houston's high-end domestic service circles, Veronica's name is tied to two nicknames, Mrs. Perfection and the Ice Queen. She demands absolute perfection in every detail. A wine glass must be placed exactly 3 centimeters from the table's edge. Every rose in the vase must face the right direction, and the bed sheets must be pulled so tight there isn't a single wrinkle. But what truly terrifies people isn't just her impossible standards, it's the way she enforces them. Veronica can smile while pointing out a mistake, but her words are sharp enough to leave someone burning with embarrassment. And when she's angry, she doesn't hesitate to unleash biting sarcasm or even a sudden slap. In the past 6 months, 9 housekeepers have left, some in tears, some disappearing quietly before dawn, and one so desperate she climbed over the fence and fled barefoot in the middle of the night. They all gave the same reason: I just couldn't work with her. The day Naomi Carter walked through the black gates of the Bennett estate, none of the existing staff believed she would last. Naomi, 34, is a black woman with warm brown skin and deep, steady eyes. She has worked many labor-intensive jobs, washing dishes in restaurants, cleaning hotel rooms, wiping down office windows. She is used to bowing her head and working hard, used to the smell of cleaning chemicals, used even to being yelled at for no reason. But Naomi didn't take this job just because it paid more than average. Her 9-year-old daughter, Deborah, was lying in a bed at Texas Children's Hospital. Born with a congenital heart defect, she needed surgery urgently. But the cost of the procedure and recovery was tens of thousands of dollars, far more than Naomi could make in any part-time or low-wage job. When she arrived, her belongings fit into a single worn nylon bag, a few changes of clothes, and a pair of frayed sandals. Before stepping inside, she told herself, just 3 months. I just have to make it 3 months. Enough to pay for Debbie. She wasn't looking for comfort, nor kindness. She was prepared for sharp words, unreasonable demands, and long hours as long as the paycheck came at the end of the month. What Naomi didn't know was that those 3 months would turn into a journey that would change her life, and the life of the coldest woman in River Oaks forever. The soft hum of small suitcase wheels rolled over the polished granite floor of the grand foyer. Naomi Carter had barely stepped inside, taking in the opulence around her, when a woman's voice called from the left. "You're Naomi?" Naomi turned. A Latina woman in her early 50s, short but sturdy, stood with her arms crossed. She wore a pale gray housekeeper's uniform. Her sharp eyes weren't cold, but they carried the weary look of someone who had seen too many new hires come and go. "I'm Linda Chavez, the house manager here. You'll work under my supervision, and, of course, under Mrs. Bennett's orders." She handed Naomi a mop and pointed to the gleaming white marble floor of the living room. "Start here, every corner spotless. Madam will be coming down in a few minutes." Naomi didn't ask questions. She tied her headscarf, knelt beside the bucket, and began mopping from the far corner, keeping her strokes even, careful not to leave streaks. Then came the sound of high heels on the main staircase. Click, click, precise, sharp, like a metronome. Naomi looked up. Veronica Rose Bennett appeared, wearing a wine-colored silk robe, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, a fine porcelain teacup in one hand. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on Naomi. Without a word, Veronica strode forward, her gaze flicking to the bucket of water beside Naomi. She tilted her cup slightly, then swish! Her foot kicked the bucket hard. Cold water spilled across the freshly cleaned marble, spreading fast. Naomi flinched back, her sandals and hem of her pants soaking through. Veronica stood over her, voice icy. "This is the third time this week someone's blocked my path. I'm not in the mood. Clean it again. Now." Naomi bent down, picked up the mop, and resumed cleaning as if nothing had happened. From the far end of the hallway, Linda shook her head and murmured to the gardener beside her, "She won't last." The next morning, Naomi woke before her alarm. At 5 a.m., Houston's sky was still pale and hazy. She had already swept the front yard, polished the glass doors, and made her way into the kitchen to help Mrs. Evelyn Parker, the Bennetts' longtime cook, at exactly 6:30. The soft shuffle of silk slippers echoed on the hardwood. Veronica entered, wrapped in a pearl-colored robe, phone in hand. Her tone was clipped and precise. "Lemon water. Room temperature. Not cold? Not warm? Do you understand?" Naomi set down her towel and nodded. "Yes, madam." She chose a thin glass, cut 2 fresh lemon slices, poured water at room temperature from the dispenser, and carried the tray up to the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. Veronica took the glass, sipped once, and said nothing. Naomi exhaled quietly and turned to leave. But Veronica's voice called after her, "There's a stain on the bathroom sink. I hate stains." Naomi replied softly, "I'll clean it right away, madam." As she leaned over to scrub the faint rust ring, likely from someone's forgotten ring, her shoulder brushed the vanity. A crystal perfume bottle wobbled. Naomi caught it just in time before it could fall. She let out a sigh of relief. But when she turned around, Veronica was in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes glacial. Smack! The slap rang sharp, hard enough to turn Naomi's head to the side. "You're clumsy." "I don't like clumsy people." Veronica's voice was flat, each word cutting. Naomi's cheek burned, her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She bowed her head and murmured, "I'm sorry, madam." She set the bottle back in perfect alignment with the others. From the hallway, Edward Bennett, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, had been watching silently. Naomi noticed, then turned away. She didn't need pity. She needed her paycheck. In the days that followed, it became clear that Veronica was intent on pushing Naomi to her limit. One morning, when Naomi opened the closet to retrieve her work uniform, the standard white blouse and black pants, everything was gone. In its place hung a faded gray t-shirt, clearly not part of any dress code. Naomi stared at it for a moment, then put it on with her wrap skirt. When she stepped into the living room, Linda's eyes widened. "You're wearing that? In this house?" Naomi simply replied, "It's clean. It's decent. That's enough." When Veronica came down and saw her in the outfit, her lips curled into a slow, mocking smile. "Did you sleep in the gutter? Or are you just dressing to match the mop?" A few staff members chuckled nervously, eyes darting away. Naomi didn't respond. She bowed her head and continued mopping. The next day, Veronica accidentally spilled red wine over the pristine white living room rug. The stain spread quickly, the sharp smell filling the air. She sank into the sofa and sighed dramatically. "Oh, what a shame. Clean it up." Naomi didn't question, didn't complain. She retrieved a towel and cleaner, kneeling to dab and blot until the red faded. On another afternoon, the sharp crash of breaking glass rang out in the dining room. Veronica stood by the shattered remains of a crystal bowl, her gaze cold. "Did you do this?" Naomi knew she hadn't touched it, but she simply said, "I'll clean it up, madam." She gathered each shard carefully, disposing of them before polishing the floor. Even Edward Bennet began to notice. One evening, while sitting in the garden with his newspaper, he saw Naomi sweeping near the rose bushes. The hem of her wrap skirt was frayed, her face lined with fatigue, but her hands moved steadily. "Naomi, right?" he called softly. "Yes, sir," she replied, pausing to greet him properly. "Are they treating you well here?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "They treat me the way life treats many of us, sir. But I'll be fine." Edward looked at her for a moment, then nodded, returning to his paper. That morning, Houston felt damp and darker than usual. Black clouds churned overhead, wind rustling through the old oak trees lining the streets, their branches knocking together in a restless rhythm. Inside the Bennet mansion, the air felt heavy, as if every window had been shut tight. Naomi was wiping down the staircase when the sound of an argument drifted from the upstairs study. Edward Bennet's voice was low but taut. "You've gone too far, Veronica. No one can take the way you treat people anymore." Veronica's voice cut back, sharp and raised. "If I don't keep everything under control, I'll have nothing left. What you're holding on to is nothing but your own loneliness." Slam. The door slammed so hard, the painting on the nearby wall rattled in its frame. Naomi froze for a moment, her heartbeat quickening, before continuing her work. But as she passed the hallway near the formal living room, a reflection in the large wall mirror caught her eye and stopped her in her tracks. Veronica Rose Bennet was sitting on the marble floor, her back pressed against the wall, one hand covering her face. The silk scarf she wore had slipped to the side, a few blonde strands in disarray. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in uneven black lines. On the floor beside her sat a half-empty glass of red wine and an opened envelope. Even without reading the whole letter, Naomi could make out a few scrawled words. "She's just a trophy wife." Veronica's other hand clenched her wedding ring so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her breathing was shallow, her gaze unfocused, as if she were forcing something bitter back down her throat. Naomi knew this was a boundary she shouldn't cross, but her feet carried her forward anyway. She reached into the pocket of her apron, pulled out a clean white towel, knelt, and set it gently beside Veronica. Her voice was quiet. "Madam?" Veronica lifted her head. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked nothing like the Ice Queen everyone feared. Her voice was hoarse, tired. "What do you want?" "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you," Naomi replied softly, rising to leave. "Wait." Naomi stopped. Veronica looked at her, her eyes a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. "Why are you still here? Everyone else has left." Naomi's reply came slowly, each word deliberate. "Because my daughter is in the hospital, and hospitals don't take stories, they take invoices." Something shifted in Veronica's expression. Those words, paired with the image of Naomi kneeling to set down a clean towel, struck a nerve, pulling her back to a long-buried memory of herself at 13, clutching an old towel and trying to wipe her own tears in a house that was never hers. Veronica sat in silence for a long moment after Naomi's reply. In the stillness, the only sounds were the soft patter of rain against the windows and the ticking of the clock. She loosened her grip, letting the wedding ring drop into her other palm, turning it slowly, as if she could see her entire past reflected there. "Did you know?" Her voice lowered, unhurried. "That I used to be a maid?" Naomi gave a slight shake of her head, her eyes fixed on Veronica, When I was 13, my mother died. My father either didn't know how or didn't want to raise a child. He sent me to live with a wealthy family in rural Alabama. They gave me a bed, meals, and pity. Veronica let out a small laugh, but it was bitter, heavier than tears. The wife there never hit me, but she made me feel beneath her. Everything I did was wrong. I was never good enough, and the worst part is that I believed it. She tightened her fingers around the clean white towel Naomi had just set down, as if clinging to something pure, something unlike the life she had known. I swore that one day I'd be in her position. No one would dare look down on me again. I'd control everything, everyone, so no one could hurt me. Naomi remained silent. She didn't say, "I understand," or "I'm sorry," because she knew there are some wounds that shouldn't be wrapped in hollow phrases. Veronica took a deep breath, her gaze unsteady as it met Naomi's seize. "But when I see you, head down, working, enduring without resentment, I see the girl I used to be, only you haven't lost yourself." A long pause settled between them. Naomi bowed her head slightly, not out of submission, but as a quiet acknowledgement that she had heard, understood, and would keep this to herself. In that moment, the space between them was no longer defined by employer and maid. It was simply two women, one who had survived her fear, and one still living with it, quietly realizing they were more alike than they had ever imagined. 2 days after their conversation in front of the mirror, no one in the house mentioned it again. Naomi continued working as usual, quietly and steadily. But she noticed one thing. When Veronica walked past her, her gaze was no longer as sharp as before. There was still distance, but it no longer felt like a blade ready to cut at any moment. That morning, as Naomi was dusting the bookshelf in the living room, Veronica came down the stairs holding a white envelope. She stopped near Naomi, placed the envelope on the table beside her, and spoke in a tone that was calm but softer than usual. "You have a daughter in the hospital, right?" Naomi was startled and turned around. "Yes, madam." "Take this. $200. Take the afternoon off and go visit her." Naomi hesitated, looking at the envelope as if it were something she wasn't sure she was allowed to touch. "Madam, Take it. Don't argue. And thank you for cleaning the stain on my desk yesterday." Naomi froze. It was the first time since she had stepped into the Bennett household that she had heard Veronica say, "Thank you." She took the envelope and bowed her head. "Thank you, madam." That afternoon, Naomi left the mansion and took a bus straight to Texas Children's Hospital. When she entered the room, Deborah was sitting up against her pillow, her dark hair neatly tied back, her eyes lighting up when she saw her mother. "Mom!" the little girl called out. Naomi hurried over, hugging her tightly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, pale pink hair bow she had bought from a roadside shop for less than $2. "I saw this and thought it was cute. Try it on, Debbie." Deborah smiled brightly, putting it on immediately and looking at herself in a small mirror. "Is it pretty, Mom?" Naomi brushed her daughter's hair. "It's beautiful. You're the prettiest girl in the world." They talked for a long while. Naomi told her light-hearted stories, avoiding any mention of the harsh words or pressure she faced at the Bennetts. For Deborah, she only wanted to bring joy and comfort. Naomi didn't know that while she was at the hospital, Veronica had quietly sent her driver, Mr. Harris, to check where she went. At first, Veronica only wanted to make sure Naomi wasn't using her day off for side work. But when Harris returned, he said simply, She went to Texas Children's Hospital, spent the whole afternoon there. Her daughter's in the pediatric cardiology unit. The nurses all know them. Veronica said nothing. Her hand, resting on the magazine in front of her, slowly curled into a fist. The next day, as Naomi was arranging flowers in the foyer, Veronica approached, her tone casual but her question unusual. "How was she yesterday?" Naomi was caught slightly off guard, but answered, "She's doing okay, madam. Still under observation, but—" Debbie smiled more. Veronica nodded slightly. She didn't say more, but from that day on, Naomi noticed the woman began asking about Deborah more often. It wasn't openly sentimental, but the questions carried a kind of concern that had never been there before. One Friday afternoon, Veronica walked into the kitchen wearing a navy silk dress and a pearl necklace, finding Naomi wiping down the counter. "Tomorrow, you'll come with me to the Houston Country Club. I want you to assist during a luncheon event. ID?" Naomi nodded, assuming it was just another work assignment. The next day, they stepped into the grand hall of the Houston Country Club. Round tables, covered in white linens, fresh flowers as centerpieces, the sound of clinking glasses, and elegantly dressed women chatting animatedly filled the space. Throughout the charity luncheon, Naomi quietly stood in a corner, pouring water and clearing plates. Near the end of the program, Veronica called her over and led her to meet a neatly dressed woman with tidy brown hair wearing a light-colored suit. "Naomi, this is Dr. Susan Whitfield, director of the Children's Heart Foundation of Texas," Veronica introduced. "Doctor, this is Naomi Carter. Her daughter is being treated for a congenital heart defect." Dr. Whitfield shook Naomi's hand warmly. "I've heard about you. Send your daughter's medical records to my office. We'll take a look." Naomi thanked her repeatedly, unsure what this meeting truly meant, only knowing it was the first time Veronica had spoken about her in a positive light to an outsider. A few days later, while Naomi was folding bed sheets in the living room, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello? Is this Miss Naomi Carter, mother of Deborah Carter?" "Yes. This is Naomi. We're calling from the Children's Heart Foundation. After reviewing your daughter's records and test results, we've decided to cover the entire cost of her surgery and post-operative care. This includes travel and medication expenses." Naomi froze for a few seconds, the sheet slipping from her hands onto the floor. I'm sorry. Could you say that again?" "We'll cover everything," the voice on the other end confirmed. Tears welled up in Naomi's eyes as she whispered, "Thank God. Thank you." From the day Naomi received the call from the Texas Children's Heart Fund, she felt like she was walking on clouds. She still worked with the same precision, but now every motion, wiping the tables, arranging the flowers, watering the roses, carried a lightness, as if each gesture held a spark of hope. Deborah, her little girl with soft curls and wide, bright eyes, was finally going to have her surgery. Naomi counted the days to that operation like she counted each breath. She didn't dare dream too far ahead, only of the moment her daughter would drift peacefully into anesthesia and wake up with a stronger heart. Inside the Bennett mansion, subtle changes began to take root. Veronica still walked in heels that clicked sharply against the marble, still wore gowns that could walk a red carpet at a moment's notice. But her voice, when giving Naomi instructions, was less cutting. No one mentioned it aloud, but Linda and the other staff noticed the hunt for Naomi seemed to be over. Edward Bennett, the rarely present husband, sat at the head of the breakfast table one morning, quietly watching Naomi pour coffee for his wife. When Naomi stepped back, he gave her a small nod, a wordless gesture. but one Naomi felt carried a quiet acknowledgement. That Saturday afternoon, the black iron gates swung open, and a silver Mercedes-AMG rolled in. Naomi glanced out from the kitchen window and saw a tall man step out. Hair slicked back, gold-rimmed sunglasses in place. Beside her, Linda muttered, "Marcus Bennett, back again." Marcus, Edward's younger brother, had once caused chaos in the family business, siphoning off investment funds until Edward forced him out of the board. After years of absence, he had returned, looking like he'd just hit a winning streak in Las Vegas. At dinner that night, Marcus filled the air with jokes and questions that felt far too personal. But it was the way he looked at Naomi, like she was an item on a menu that sent a chill through her. When his wine glass was half empty, Marcus leaned back and smirked. "I hear there's someone in this house who's getting more favor than family." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Edward set his knife down, glanced briefly at Veronica. She only curved her lips slightly, saying nothing. Naomi kept her head down, clearing plates, though the comment left a cold knot in her stomach. The next day, Veronica crossed paths with Naomi in the back garden after walking her poodle. She stood still, watching Naomi trim the rose bushes. "How's Deborah?" The question was simple, yet it caught Naomi off guard. "She's doing well, madam." "She's excited. Yesterday she asked when she could get her heart fixed so she can run with her friends." Veronica nodded slightly and turned away without another word. But, in that brief moment, Naomi felt there was an invisible thread between them. Fragile, but real. 3 days later, on a sweltering morning, Veronica opened her jewelry case to choose a bracelet for a charity board meeting. The compartment where she kept her diamond bracelet, a 10th anniversary gift from Edward, was empty. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Blood rushed to her face. She rang the bell sharply for Linda. "Bring Naomi here. Now." Naomi entered, still holding her dusting cloth. "Did you clean my room this morning?" "Yes, madam." "But I didn't." Silence. "The police will handle it." Naomi's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Edward stood in the doorway, his expression wavering for just a moment, before he turned away without a word. An hour later, 2 police officers arrived. They didn't handcuff Naomi, but they asked her to sit in the living room for a few questions. Veronica sat opposite her, arms crossed, face cold. "Did you touch the jewelry box this morning?" "No, sir. I only dusted the vanity." Naomi's voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. She thought of Deborah. If this went on record, who would ever trust a mother accused of theft to apply for medical aid? The officers searched Naomi's small room, even emptied her nylon bag of personal belongings. They found nothing, of course, but the act itself was enough to cut Naomi to the core. 2 days later, Naomi was in the kitchen, washing glasses when Linda burst in, breathless. "Naomi, Madam wants you in the study now." Naomi stepped in to see Veronica at her desk, eyes fixed on the screen. Security footage from the garage played. Marcus opening his car trunk, pulling out a small box, and slipping it into Naomi's car, before glancing around and closing it. Veronica tossed the USB onto the desk in front of Marcus, who stood in the corner. "You think I'm blind?" Marcus shrugged with a smirk. "Just a little test." "You trust an outsider more than your own blood, so I helped you see straight." "No, Marcus. All you've proven is that blood can be more poisonous than any stranger." That afternoon, police came to take Marcus away. Edward watched in silence, his face like stone. Naomi stood at the back, heart pounding not with fear, but with relief. That evening, Veronica called Naomi into the living room. The warm yellow light softened her face, no icy mask, just something tired and real. Naomi, I was wrong. Not just the day the bracelet went missing, but from the moment you stepped into this house, I let my past turn me into the very person I once hated. Naomi said nothing, simply meeting Veronica's gaze. From today, you're no longer a maid. I want you to be the household manager. Double the salary, clear days off, a formal contract. Naomi froze. She had never imagined hearing those words from the Ice Queen of River Oaks. Thank you, madam. Her voice trembled slightly. Veronica smiled, truly smiled for the first time Naomi had ever seen. Call me Veronica. On an early autumn morning in Houston, the sky was a soft blue, and sunlight spilled gently over the roof of Texas Children's Hospital. Naomi held Deborah's small hand tightly as they walked toward the surgical wing. The little girl wore a pale blue hospital gown, her curls neatly tied back with a pink bow, Veronica's gift delivered that very morning. At the operating room door, Dr. Susan Whitfield knelt to meet Deborah's eyes and spoke gently. You're going to take a deep sleep, and when you wake up, your heart will be stronger. Naomi kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, I'll be right here, waiting for you. The door closed. Naomi sank into a waiting room chair, clutching the handkerchief Deborah always carried. Moments later, Veronica appeared no evening gown, no high heels, just a simple beige outfit. She sat beside Naomi without a word and handed her a cup of hot coffee. Thank you, Veronica, Naomi said softly. After nearly 4 hours, the surgeon stepped out, removed her mask, and smiled. Everything went beautifully. She'll need time to recover, but her heart is stronger now. Naomi broke down in tears, her hands covering her face. Veronica reached over and placed a steady hand on her shoulder, a small gesture, yet one filled with shared relief. Weeks later, Naomi brought Deborah back to River Oaks. The little girl now ran freely around the Bennett garden without gasping for breath. The household staff adored her, especially Linda, the very one who once swore Naomi wouldn't last a week. One golden afternoon, Veronica stood on the second-floor balcony, watching Deborah play with the poodle. She called Naomi into her study. I want you and Deborah to stay here permanently. This house has been missing a child's laughter. Naomi hesitated. Staying meant stability, but also meant binding herself to a family that had once caused her so much pain. Veronica poured herself a glass of white wine and spoke without preamble. Naomi, there's something I've never told you. When I was 17, I lived in a house like this, but I was the one scrubbing floors and folding laundry. The homeowners treated me like I didn't exist. I swore that one day I'd walk into houses like these as someone who belonged, but somewhere along the way, I lost the part of me that knew compassion. Naomi stayed silent. The confession explained everything: the icy walls, the cutting remarks, and why she had eventually opened her heart after the Marcus incident. After a pause, Naomi replied, Deborah needs a safe home, and maybe I need a new start too. Veronica smiled. Then let's start over. The new contract was signed. Naomi became the Bennett's household manager, earning enough to pay off her old debts and save for Deborah's future. News of Marcus's arrest rippled through Houston's elite, but inside River Oaks, the story people whispered about wasn't the scandal, it was the unexpected bond between Veronica and Naomi. Linda, once the most skeptical, said to Naomi, as they arranged the living room together. "I've never seen her like this. I think you reminded her who she used to be." One quiet evening, Naomi sat by her bedroom window, gazing at the garden glowing under strands of golden lights. In the distance, Veronica strolled with her poodle, while Deborah ran beside her, laughter floating into the night air. Naomi whispered to herself, "3 months! I only planned to stay for 3 months, and now this feels like home." The garden light spilled across her face, illuminating a gentle smile, the smile of a woman who had walked through storms and found a quiet place of peace, right in the heart of where the storms once began. Thank you for watching this story. If Naomi's journey moved you as much as it moved us, please give this video a like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to True Tale Time for more powerful real-life-inspired stories. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that remind us all compassion can change everything.